Hello everyone, welcome back to our next training. In this training, we're going to discuss the same Zscaler client connector ZCC endpoint firewall and AV error. And this is the second training, right, in this series. The first training we discussed what is this firewall, antivirus error, why this error comes in, what is the process ZCC follows, and we also check the working, ZSA tunnel logs for this, this firewall and AV error. Now, this is the second training in this series, and we're gonna look, the firewall rules that, how do you check, right? That what rule are there, if there is a rule or not, right? How to verify, okay? So to do that, let's start from where we ended, right, in our last training. So what I've done to save some time, uh, I have two set of logs, the working and the non-working. So working and non-working, I mean that when I have that firewall error and where I don't have a firewall error, right? So let's just open the working, no, I mean not no error one, the working one, okay? So first of all, let's just open the packet captures, okay? And we also gonna open the ZAC tunnel logs because that's where we gonna have our traces, okay? So let's open it. All right. So in our last training, we understood that, right? We should filter for the keyword echo because that firewall ZCC does a TCP echo on a IP address 164.0.6. In this, what we can see even in this filter only that there is a TCP echo received. It's a 25 bytes of data, right? And so, and yeah, I mean that's so all this information, and we can even search for a specific identity ID, and then we can search for a specific trace, right? We understood that this is the destination 164, which is the IP of a ZCC itself, right? It holds that IP, and what system does, it connects to the port 80, right, from the local system IP address shoot 9000. Okay, that's what we already know, and I think we have already seen this output, right? This working GSA tunnel log traces we already seen. So let's not you know go more detail on this, but let's just check the Wireshark captures for in case of working. So let me open. So you will have a LWF captures and the physical adapter capture as capture address adapters. Okay, so we will be looking into the LWF captures and the IP we're interested in, since we checking for the firewall block. That's 100.64.0.6, right? Okay, now we have the trace here, and we can see there is a communication happening to that IP address. So from the source IP, this is a system in a source IP address 192.168.140.129, and this is trying to connect to 164.0.6 on a destination port 80. All right, you can see the first that there is a TCP handshake happened, right? Once that TCP handshake is successful, we have a 25 where is that? I think 25 bytes of data it sends, right? Yeah, here it is. There is a 25 bytes of data, right? And that's TCP yeah, that's what it is. And then it terminated that connection. So let's just follow it, right? Let's follow one of that trace and see how that happens. Okay, so you see, so when you follow that trace, it says it's a data health check message. This is a health check message, and the health check is basically for GCC to check if there is any process blocking the firewall connection, right? So you see the TCP handshake, and then there is a 25 bytes of data, and then the connection termination. Very simple process. This is what the Zscaler client connector does, right? In every 10 second, right? Okay, and you can see it's keep doing it. So this is the case where we have a working log. That's how it should look like. So if this transactions, right, and this with the communication happening, like this, that means you're not gonna get any error in your Zscaler client connector. It should be, it should connect, right? Now let us check the non-working scenario now. Okay, let me close this. Okay. So in case of non-working where we getting an error, let me open that file. Okay. So what we are interested in, that we are interested in the packet capture and the ZSA tunnel logs. Okay. So let me open these all LWF capture, and along with the LWF capture, I gonna open the ZSA tunnel logs. Okay. Where it is? Okay, this is the latest one. All right. So let's first search for the important keyword which we already discussed. That's the echo, because it's a TCP echo. It does, right? So in this TCP echo, what we see that it's okay, it's going okay. We receive a TCP, echo request. Let's scroll it down. Where do we have an error? Okay, so far it's going good. Now what we see that after, so till here it's okay. We were receiving the TCP echo successfully, but then after, you see, there is an error which is error connecting to TCP echo server selected as 0. So that means the ZCC not able to connect to the I mean, yeah, the system is not able to form a connection to this IP address, and we can see that error continuously there, right? That means we gonna get that firewall or antivirus error. Okay, now if I follow this trend, right, let me just follow this. Okay, you see that's where it's failing. Okay, and let's just check it on the firewall as well. Okay, IP dot 100.64.0.6, right? Okay, now what we see that there is a TCP handshake happening, and after a TCP handshake, the system send a packet to this 100.64.0.6 IP address, and we see there is no response coming back, right? Let's follow a trace, and you see there is a send packet sent, and after a send packet there is no response back, right? That means there is a connectivity problem, and this is because the packet hasn't reached to the IP address. We try to resend it, but that tells us that there is something blocking, in this firewall. Either it could be a firewall policy, a firewall rule, endpoint security software, a firewall rule pushed by a ZPO, or or any other method. But yeah, there is something which is blocking that communication. Okay. Now, since we have checked the working and non-working logs, right? Let us check. Okay, let us check that how do we understand? So what happens? Okay, let me tell you. So when you install a Zscaler client connector, and then when that ZSA tunnel process comes in, right? That starts. What it does, it creates a firewall rule. Okay, that firewall rule is basically to allow ZSA tunnel process. Okay, and to all the IP addresses. So if you can see, add firewall trust is called, and then it adding a firewall rule here, which is a Zscaler app rule. Okay, so this is the firewall rule ZCC add when the ZSA tunnel starts, because that ZSA, because ZCC has to communicate, right? And this ZSA tunnel, because that's a tunnel, that's a process which is responsible for the for that traffic processing. It needs to allow, I mean, there should be a rule which allow the communication to ZSA tunnel, right? We can check this rule in our firewall as well. So if you go to the town, right, this is the rule which says Zscaler app rule, and if you can see, This is allowed in private, public, and domain, and it allowing all IP, all protocol communication, right? But one thing to remember though, that Zscaler add this, this firewall rule, and this is a very open firewall rule which says allow ZSA tunnel communication, right? That particular process communication to all IP and all port. But one thing to remember, that how these firewall rule works is that if you have a block rule, right, and even that block rule is not very specific, right, kind of a open-ended a block rule, that block rule take preference. So even though if you have a allow rule in the in the firewall inbound inbound rules, this one, if you have a rule above or anywhere, right, a block rule, that would take preference, and you may see that this is getting blocked. Okay, one thing that you can check, the first thing you should check, that you have a rule there, which is this Zscaler app rule, and that is enabled, right? It's not disabled. Now, how do you check? What other method you can check it, right? This rule. So to get more details about this rule, what you can do, you can go to app info, right? And you can open this app info to, let's say, Notepad++. And once you open this, app info, let's just search for Zscaler app rule. Okay. Now you would see that Zscaler app rule here, and what this will tell you, that this rule is there, right? And this rule is enabled. Okay, this is an inbound rule in direction. And the profile it has, it is for the public, private, and domain, right? Domain join, public, and private network. That means. And this is allowing any IP, any remote IP, local IP protocol, and this is allowing, right? The action is allowed. So this is a rule you can verify, because the ZSA tunnel doesn't give you more information, right? If you check the app info, that gives you more detail about it. Okay. Other ways that you can use this command in your C, right? Command prompt CLI, and you can get information about it, just in case if you do not have logs available. You can run this command to to your system, and you can get the output, right? The same command with ZCC executed. Basically, it will give you all the details about all the firewall rules, but you can always filter for the rule you're interested in. Okay, that's the one thing you should check. The next thing we should be checking is that, uh, okay, let me open it. Okay, the next thing you should be checking is that what type of right, the proper configuration is there. So when you go to your firewall properties, at time what happens if you pushing a policy or a ZPO rule from firewall rule from ZPO for your domain profile, private or public profile. At time what happens, that rule, that ZPO rule, tries to modify the rule ZCC created for itself, right? So in that case, what happens, that rule merging happens, right? So when there is a rule merge happens, uh, you may see, right, that the local firewall rule may not take preference, and the ZPO rule may take preference, right? In that case as well, you may see that you may get that kind of error. So in that case, you should allow these local apply local firewall rule to the system, because that's a rule created by the Zscaler client connector itself. Or maybe you push a rule from the ZPO itself. Okay, I haven't done it, but I think that'll work, because that's the same thing. You should have these two options enabled. Okay. And yeah, and this is not only in case of domain profile, but public and private, right? So at time what happens, it may happen that in the office network it works, but in the private, when you go home, and maybe when you are on a different network, it doesn't work. So that you'll have to verify that what kind of a firewall ruling happening there. If you know if it's changing their the merging rules, and that can also change behavior in different network. Okay. All right. Now what else we can check? So we have verified, right, where we can check for the rule. What is the rule name? Hmm. Okay, one more important thing that you need to understand that if you remember from our last training that the in the firewall rule you should have the Zscaler tunnel and the processes allowed. So this is where the Windows Defender firewall and this is where the processor you should allow as an application. So you can see ZSA tunnel rule. This is the one which is there created by default and it should be allowed. Make sure that this rule is not unchecked. If it is unchecked, then you may get the errors. Ignore these other ZSA tunnel rules because that's what I created for test purpose. Along with this, there is one more important configuration which uh, you know, you should be checking if you're getting this error. Okay, and that's Windows security, right? So the Windows security policy for the public-private domain, right? Firewall protection. And if we check that firewall protection, let's say for the domain network, if that incoming connections are blocked, this may block the Zscaler internal communications.